Yeah, I don't know if we could do this justice today, but we'll try. This talk of the Rebbe discusses very um, lofty concepts and very profound concepts, but yet making very subtle distinctions between one thing and another. And I'm not sure we could do justice for it today, but we're going to try. This talk of the Rebbe explains a lot of concepts in Chassidus, very fundamental concepts, and concepts not only in Chassidus, but concepts in our life. So without further ado, let's go straight to it. This week's Torah portion talks about the giving of the Torah. And it says the Torah was given with 5 voices. The Torah uses the word voice 5 times in the description of the giving of the Torah. There was the voice of the shofar. There was the voice of the thunder. The Torah uses that word 5 times, voice. And we also find by a groom and a bride, by a marriage, there's also 5 expressions of the word voice. The Talmud says that if you bring happiness to a groom and a bride, you merit to have the Torah, because the Torah was given with 5 voices. So obviously, the connection between a groom and the Torah is not merely in the number of voices that the Torah associates with them. Rather, it's because they have an inner connection. That's why they're also connected in number. It's kind of like the way the Torah describes Yaakov Avinu. Torah says that Yaakov was given 10 blessings, corresponding to the 10 utterances with which God created the world. So Chassidus explains that the reason why Yaakov was given 10 blessings, one of the 10 blessings of Yaakov, have to do with the 10 utterances with which God created the world. The world was created for the sake of the Jewish people keeping the Torah. And therefore, when a Jew brings the light of the Torah into the world, he is thereby able to channel also the 10 blessings that are associated with the Torah gives. That's why the Talmud says, Elazar says that the blessings that Esav received were fulfilled. The blessings that Yaakov received weren't fulfilled, says the Talmud, because Yaakov took to heaven and Esav took to this world. Meaning, in order to channel the blessings of Yaakov, you have to make the world a vessel for its inner core, for its inner truth. So my point in bringing this is that the number 10 isn't just a random number that they both are distinct with, but that both are classified with. Rather, they both have a similar content, and that's why they have the same number. It's like the story of the Mittler Rebbe. The Mittler Rebbe writes in one of his discourses about how there's a certain vein in the mind, in the brain, that when this vein is moved forward, it helps your power of concentration. And when this vein is moved backwards, it helps your power to remember things. And that's why when someone wants to remember something, what do? They put their head backwards. Someone wants to concentrate, they put their head forwards. So someone asked the Rebbe Rashab, was a Mittler Rebbe a doctor? How did he know how things worked in the physical, in the body? And the Rebbe Rashab responded, it's not that the Mittler Rebbe was a doctor. He knew how things were in a spiritual realm, and for that he understood how things are also in the physical realm. But we are physical people, so we only understand things from the physical realm, and from the physical realm we can deduce how things are in the spiritual realm. So let's look at the number 5 and how it relates to Torah and marriage. Then we'll see how they're connected to each other. The simple connection between the Torah and a groom is that the groom, in the language of Kabbalah, is the giver, and the bride is the recipient. And so to the Torah bestows the revelation of godliness upon the Jew who studies the Torah. So the Torah is like the groom, the giver. The Jewish people are like the bride, the receiver. So what's the idea of the 5 voices? What's the idea of a voice in general? The idea of a voice is the transmission of something to someone else. And depending on the content of what you're trying to transmit, is a different kind of voice. There are many Um, there are many different kinds of things we say. We could say something in a commanding tone. We can say something in a loving tone. It says in the Talmud, the words of the wise are heard when they're recited softly. So too in heaven, in the spiritual realm, there are different kinds of revelation. And because of different kinds of revelation, there are different kinds of voices. So the Torah is given with 5 voices means the Torah has 5 kinds of revelation, each one higher than the other. And this is the wondrous thing we see by the giving of the Torah, that the Torah is given with 5 voices. In general, the spiritual cosmos is divided into 4 categories. It says there are 4 worlds. There are 4 letters of God's name, and the 4 letters of God's name give the vitality. Each letter of God's name gives vitality to another world. And so what's unique about the Torah is that Torah doesn't just channel the 4 kinds of revelation, but rather the Torah connects to the essence of Hashem, who is beyond the 4 worlds, beyond even the 4 letters of God's name. And as we see in this week's Torah portion, when the Torah says that God gave the Torah, what does the Torah say? I am the Lord your God. The Talmud says, the Torah says, I am Lord your God. And the Talmud comments, the word I refers to the essence of Hashem, was no definition at all. That the essence of Hashem gives us the Torah. The Torah is connected to Hashem's essence. And that's why the Torah is given with 5 voices, not just the 4 letters of God's name, but there's also expression of the essence of Hashem. So again, we're not physical, we're only physical people, so we can't understand the things as they are in the spiritual realm without looking at how this plays out in the physical realm. From the physical realm, we can go back to the spiritual realm. So the 4 letters of Hashem's name, which produce the 4 worlds, also produce 4 different kinds of things in this world. In this world also, there are 4 kinds of creatures which correspond to the 4 letters of Hashem's name. And these 4 kinds of creatures in this world also, as we'll see, correspond to 4 things within each of us. Let's begin. The 4 kinds of creatures are the inanimate, vegetation, animal, and human. Chaim. The difference between the inanimate and the kingdom of vegetation is that in the inanimate, you look at something inanimate, all that you'll see is the physical. You can't see anything spiritual in the inanimate. That's why the Hebrew word for inanimate is silent. It has a soul. As Arizal says, even a cup of water, even a stone has a soul, has a godly energy, but it's silent. You don't notice any spiritual energy in it. In a way, the difference between the inanimate and the other 3 categories is far greater than the difference between vegetation and animal and human, because in the latter 3 categories, they have something in common. You could see in the vegetation and in animals and in humans that there is life. The kind of life is different, yes, but you could see that they're alive. But in the inanimate, you don't see any energy at all. But nevertheless, although there is certainly a clear demarcation setting apart the inanimate from the other 3 categories, if we were to divide the 4 categories into 2, we would still place vegetation and the inanimate in the category of body, versus animal and human we would categorize as soul. And we see this in Jewish, in Halacha and Torah. The Torah says that until the flood, it was forbidden for people to eat animals. They're in the category of soul, but they were commanded to eat vegetation. So how can we understand this? By animals, their life is a soul kind of life. That's why we see by animals this power of desire. We also see by animals that their soul is so much a part of them that they're able to, as soon as they desire to do something, their body moves immediately. In vegetation, all we see is the physical. It's just we see the physical plant, tree, herb, blade of grass grow. The physical thing, the body, is growing. But there's nothing soul-ish, if you will, in the vegetation. It's just you see how the body is growing. Therefore, there must be some energy, some life force that's making that happen. But in an animal, you see much more. In an animal, you see how the animal is alive. The animal has a desire. The animal's body is subservient to the soul to the extent that as soon as the animal's soul wants to do something, animal want that in Kabbalah, desire and soul are very connected. The animal wants to do something, the animal does what it wants, the body moves automatically. But again, in vegetation, you don't see any sign of life in its body. You don't see any distinction in what the body is. The body is the body. It's just the body grows. The body is it's not a soul-like existence. It's a body existence. Let me explain it a little more clearly. In vegetation, what are you seeing? You're seeing a physical material. In an animal, what are you seeing? You're seeing a live organism. It's a whole different thing. The live organism has a body, but you're looking at something that's alive. Versus when you're looking at vegetation, it's not very different to looking at a rock. It's just that it has something in it that makes the body grow. Versus an animal is alive. This distinction between vegetation and animal is also expressed in the fact that in order for vegetation to grow, it has to be in a very specific place. It can't go out of its place. But an animal can move from place to place. And the reason for this is one of the characteristics, rather, of the physical is the physical takes up space, and the physical is in a specific place. And since the vitality of vegetation, it's a bodily kind of vitality. Again, all you see is a change in body. It's not alive. It's not a live thing. It just has something in it that makes it grow. But its whole identity is its body. So therefore, vegetation needs to stay in the same place for it to grow. But an animal, since it has a spiritual kind of energy, therefore it's able to move from place to place, because the definition of physical is that it has parameters, has limitation. So because the vegetation is more physical, it's more body-ish, therefore it's limited in being in a certain place. So just like in these two categories, the inanimate and vegetation, although they're both in the category of body, but the difference between them is far greater in a way than the difference between vegetation and the other higher categories. The other three categories, distinction between them is less than the distinction between the inanimate and the others, because in the inanimate you don't see any life force at all. So just like there's a major distinction between the inanimate and the other three categories, so too in man, we also see how man is a completely different category than all the other three as well. Because man is a chosen one of all creatures, and all creatures are created for the sake of man. And just like what distinguishes the inanimate from the other categories is that you don't see any life force at all, so too in the other extreme, what distinguishes man from all other categories is that in man you see the true idea of life, the true idea of soul. What's the true idea of soul? True idea of spirituality. Spirituality means the ability to go beyond any kind of border, any kind of classification. It even says, although the soul has 10 soul powers before it comes to a body, it's very difficult for us as human beings to really picture what those soul powers are without a body. In other words, although the soul does have 10 soul powers even before it gets a body, but it's the physical body that crystallizes and calcifies what those 10 soul powers are. As they are before a body, the parameters between them sheds. It fades away. There's no hard and fast separation between them, because the more spiritual something is, the less of a border it has. The definition, the characteristic of spirituality is that spirituality doesn't have borders, doesn't have limitation. The more spiritual, the less borders it has. So that's what we will find in general. One of the litmus tests of something spiritual is inclusion. You know that you're doing something holy if you're able to, and you're in a holy space, if you're able to include others and be connected to others. So the true meaning of spirituality again is simplicity. Like we find about, for example, Shammai and Hillel. They argue about so many things, but they learn from the same teachers, Shammai and Avtalion. And the reason why they had such arguments is because the way the ideas were in their minds were more distinct, were more tangible, and therefore there was clear disagreement. But as those same ideas were in a higher realm by their teacher, as when the ideas can be more as they are more spiritual, there's no distinction between Beis Shammai and Hillel. In their teachers presenting the ideas, they can go both ways. As the idea, anything, the more spiritual something is, the less borders it has, the more simplicity you feel, and the less definition you feel. So this is expressed in the idea of spirituality, not having borders. We see this in a couple of things. Again, you see this in the idea of the world of ideas. That the more abstract an idea is, the more it could be. It's not a contradiction to another idea. The more two ideas can coexist with each other, or interplay, or connect with each other. Another characteristic of spirituality is that spirituality draws to something higher than itself. Spirituality always wants to grow, to be better. As the Torah says, it is the nature of the animal to descend, nature of the human to ascend. So this is a reason why the human being is considered to be the truly spiritual one of the four categories, the one whose life is really a soul kind of life, because man, with man's intelligence, unlike the emotions, which emotions are people who are emotional, people are interacting with the world around them in a very the world around them touches them in a very profound way, so that they react, they're drawn, they're distant, they are attracted, they reject. But the intellect isn't limited to having any specific kind of character. In other words, our intellect can help us change our character. There's a way we're born with our characteristics and how we react to people, how we react to events. But our mind can take us above the nature of our character traits. And that's the reason why, since man's special gift is his intelligence, that's why he's considered a whole different category of spirituality than the other categories. Man has this nature to has the ability to absorb different ideas, contradictory ideas in himself. Again, spirituality means that it's not defined, it's able to connect with other things. So because man has more intelligence, man is able to accept opposing ideas and for them both to resonate. Man is able to handle the opposing ideas and for them both to reside as one. And also man has this nature of ascending to go to a higher level. An animal is drawn out to physical things. So because man is a small world, so we could see the four categories of the inanimate, vegetation, animal, and human in man himself. As Chassidic says, that man has four categories within himself. There is letters, which are analogous to the inanimate. Because what are letters? In letters, unlike emotions, there's no life recognizable in letters. Letters are just words. Like we had Baruch Hashem, this great guest this past Shabbos. Unlike other speakers, which are focusing only on what their mouth is saying, someone remarked about the speaker, he's humbly speaking from the heart, speaking from the soul. Letters have no vitality in them. Letters are just words. They're analogous to the inanimate, where you don't see any life force in them. Letters don't even have the nature of growth. Unlike midas, our feelings are the way we react to the world. The way the world, so we're something external, the way we react to the world. The part of us which is reactionary. It's not the way we are inside ourselves, the way we are more external, more superficial, more affected by the world around us. On the other hand, emotions are an expression of where you are. So the emotions are expression of soul. Emotions grow. Your emotions change as you grow older. You're drawn after higher things than you were when you were younger. Emotions grow. So emotions are analogous to vegetation, and letters are analogous to the inanimate. The power to think, the power of intelligence, has no comparison at all to the power of emotions, power of feelings. Because again, emotions are about the way we react to the world around us, versus our intelligence is the way we think ourselves, not the way we're reacting to others, what we have inside ourselves. And that's analogous to the difference between the animals and humans. Again, we said animals correspond to intelligence. So the intelligence of a human being, that's the intelligence of a human being is analogous to an animal. Why like an animal? Because an animal has the ability to go from place to place. We said before about plant life. The plant life, in order for it to grow, has to be in the same place, versus an animal can go from one place to another. So too, the intelligence is able to draw us from one place, one style of living, one way of reacting to the world, to a higher way. So just like an animal can move from place to place, so the corresponding faculty within us, the animal faculty within us, is the power of intelligence. And intelligence can cause us to change our characteristics. It could also bring us, again, to go higher than ourselves. Intelligence isn't limited to being a certain style. Although psychologists say that many people always come to the same conclusions. You give the analogy of a person throwing out a fishing rod 1,000 times, and he always catches the same fish. Why? Because he's always fishing in the same pond. So similarly, we always think and think and think, but it could be we're affected by our feelings, and therefore we always stuck to it to come to the same conclusions. The idea of thinking out of the box is to be objective and to put your feelings aside and to think objectively, not letting your intelligence be hijacked by your emotions. So that's the reason why intelligence is considered a whole higher category than the animal, than emotions. But still, intelligence is only considered the animal part of man. It's not considered the medaber, the human part of man. Because, after all, intelligence is something you're making a change in your life because of the way you understand things. It has to do with you. It has to do with your existence. It has to do with you, your persona. Your changes in your character because of your experiences and what you've learned. But what is the title the Torah gives for man in the Torah? Torah says, "He Adam nefesh chayim." Man became a spirit that was alive. What's the Torah's word to describe man's life? Ruch mala, ability to speak. Because the idea of communication with another person is to go out of yourself, completely ignoring your existence, and you're not limited to being only in you. You have to go out of you. So that's why speech is considered the title of what man is. Intelligence is still about some kind of experience that you're having, about your existence, about your ego in a way, versus speech is about you suspending your ego and relating to others. So this distinction that we're making between the four categories of inanimate, vegetation, animal, and human, and in the man, difference between the power, letters, and emotions, and intelligence, and the power of communication, these four categories are also in the four worlds. Before we go further, let's go over the Rebbe's analogy of the four worlds. The Rebbe said that it's harder sometimes to explain the most fundamental concepts. The Rebbe gives an analogy to explain the four worlds. There's the way a king is in his private chambers. There's a way a king comes out of his private chambers to the courtroom, where everyone is standing with reverence and subservience and attachment to the king. There are people that the king sends outside the courtroom, outside the the courtroom, the throne room. People leave the throne room to do various missions for the king, but they know what the king is about. They've been in the throne room. And then there are people at the far reaches of the kingdom who have never seen the king. They've barely heard about him. In a similar way, there are four worlds. The highest world, the world of Atzilus, is analogous to the king's chambers, where all there is the king. The second world, the world of Bria, is compared to the throne room, where there are souls and angels, which are in a state of absolute rapture and attachment to the king, to Hashem. Then there are the souls and angels as they leave that world, that realm. And the beginning of the creation of this world is happening, but it's not yet so material, it's not physical yet, the world of Yetzirah. There's a clear knowledge of the Creator, the world of Yetzirah. Although it's the beginning of creation of the world, it's not yet there. Then there's a physical world, which is analogous to the far reaches of the kingdom, which have barely heard about. So where does creation begin in these four worlds? Creation begins in the world of Bria, in the throne room. Before the world of Bria, all there is the king. But what is the creation in the world of Bria? What kind of creation is it? The previous Rebbe says the creation of the world of Bria is Efsharis HaMetziv. That's called the possibility of existence. Although something exists, but it's not really called a separate existence, because what is the identity of the souls and angels in the throne room? Their attachment to Hashem. They don't see themselves as a distinct entity. They exist. There's something that's there. But it's analogous to the animal. Just like an animal. What is an animal? An animal mainly is its life force, its vitality. Unlike vegetation, animate, where you don't see its life force, what's unique about an animal is that it is alive. Its body is subservient to it. So too in the world of Bria, there are souls and angels, but they're compared to the animal in the sense that what is their existence, their soul, their divinity, their divine energy. What is the definition of the world of Bria? It's godly, it's godliness. So just like intelligence allows us to go beyond ourselves, and not to be limited in the way we are, so too in the world of Bria, there is this ability to attach to divinity. That's why Chassidus compares the world of Bria to fish in the ocean. You look at the ocean, you don't see the fish, you just see the ocean. So too in the world of Bria, you don't see distinct creatures. You just see how they are, all these creatures in a state of rapture, of devekus with Hashem. So that's why the world of Bria is called Bria, not Yetzirah. Yetzirah means the world beneath Bria, the world beneath the throne room, if you will, is called form, Yetzirah. In Asiya, in this physical world, there's already distinct form. In Yetzirah, there's a general form. In the world of Bria, there isn't yet a form. In the world of Bria, all there is the truth of Hashem that's dominant, analogous to the throne room, where all you feel is the king's presence. But still, despite the fact that the identity of the world of Bria is its divine core, there's still something here. Another analogy Chassidus gives to describe the world of Bria is our power to think. Our power to think is just a mirror of what's going on inside our soul. In our conscious mind, the thoughts that we have, our power of thought is attached to the soul. We know what our soul is experiencing by the thoughts that we're having. Our feelings directly feed our thoughts. Our intellect feeds our thoughts. Our thoughts are a channel, it's a garment. Our thoughts are a garment for the soul, a garment which can't be taken off. Unlike the power of speech, which you could decide to speak or not to speak, you can't decide not to think. You're always thinking. But your power of thought is attached to your soul. But is it soul? No. Soul is intellect. Soul is emotions. The words that you're thinking, that's what thought means, the words you're thinking. Those words are coming from your soul, but it's not soul itself. So the world of Bria, there is the divinity of the world of Bria, and then there is the existence of the creatures of the world of Bria. What is their existence? Their attachment to their divine core, but there's still something here that wasn't there before. But the world of Atzilus, the highest world, the world of Atzilus is literally godliness. That's like the throne, the king's private chambers. There's nothing other than the king. There is nothing that exists. Nothing can be called a creature in the world of Atzilus. So although just like we said before about the four categories, the inanimate, vegetation, animal, and human, and how they correspond to the four letters of Hashem's name. And we discussed in depth the distinction between the four categories and the four worlds. All these distinctions emanate from the four letters of God's name, Yud and Hey and Vav and Hey. Although the four letters of Hashem's name are way beyond the four categories of inanimate, vegetation, animal, and human, but that's where they come from. And the four letters of Hashem's name are also the source of the four worlds. So the four letters of Hashem's name, although they're channeling godliness and creating all these four realms and four kinds of creatures within the world and the four kinds of things within ourselves, but it's not Hashem himself. It's the way Hashem is creating something. It's Hashem as a creator, not Hashem in his essence. So there's some relationship between the four letters of Hashem's name and creation, and therefore it's not a description. The four letters of Hashem's name are not a description of Hashem himself. They're the way Hashem is creating something. And that's the great value of the Torah. The Torah is given with 5 voices. That means that the Torah has in it a 5th level, which is beyond the 4 parameters, beyond the 4 categorizations within the spiritual cosmos. The Torah has the true idea of simplicity. Even the world of Atzilus, which is called a godly world, even the throne room, the king's private chambers, which all there is the king, it's still called a world. So there's the 4 worlds and the 4 letters of Hashem's name are not an expression of Hashem's essence. And this is the greatness of the Torah. The Torah was given with 5 voices, which indicates the Torah is connected to Hashem's very essence, not just the creation. And that's the relationship between a chassan, a groom, and the Torah. A groom has also, the Torah says if you make a groom happy, you get to have the Torah, which is given with 5 voices. The groom also has the idea of the 5th. Why? Because in the power of procreation, the power of, which is the goal of marriage, is to bring offspring to the world, to go on forever, there is an expression of the infinite light of Hashem, which is beyond all the parameters of the 4 categories. So even though the Torah is far beyond creation, Torah is expression of Hashem's essence, yet Hashem gave us the Torah. Hashem gave us the 5 voices in the Torah. That means when Hashem gave us the Torah, He didn't just give us the 4 worlds and the 4 kinds of divine energy that create those 4 worlds. Hashem also gave us the 5th level. Hashem also gave us the essence of godliness in the Torah itself. And the Torah gave it, and Hashem gave it to us all together. Hashem gave us the essence of godliness together with other 4 levels. The reason for this is by studying the 4 parts of the Torah, we're able to connect to the 4 levels of our soul. There is the power of nefesh, power of obedience, the power of love for Hashem, emotions. There's a power to understand God's oneness. And then there is chaya, that there is a power to serve Hashem beyond logical reason. So through the 4 voices in Torah, we're able to reveal the 4 parts of our soul: our obedience to Hashem, our love for Hashem, our understanding of Hashem's oneness, and our devotion to Hashem beyond logical reason. But there's also in the Torah the essence of godliness, which touches and reveals and triggers the essence of the soul, the yechida, which is the reason why a Jew stops from the day and davens mincha, the reason why a Jew is ready to give his life rather than sever his bond with Hashem. That part of the soul is also animated and triggered and elevated by the Torah. The Torah was given, Hashem gave us all of the 5 parts of the Torah at once, in order that in ourselves also, Hashem doesn't just want us to have that deepest part of the soul to be distinct and apart from the other parts of our life. Hashem wants that we should walk around with the yechida, that whatever we are doing, whether it's a nefesh activity of obedience, activity of davening, of love for Hashem, activity of understanding, whatever we're doing has to be based on the core of who a Jew is, the attachment to Hashem that a Jew doesn't want and cannot sever his bond with Hashem. So Torah was given with 5 voices at once. Hashem wants it to be connection between the 5th idea in Torah, the essence of godliness, the essence of the soul, and the rest of who we are. That's why the Torah was given with all 5 voices together, telling us that Hashem wants us in ourselves as well to bring out our very core in our daily life. All right, let's stop here. A great day, Chaim Peretz. Great day, Rebero. Great day.